Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. This is Season 14, Episode 19. Today, we're thrilled to have the celebrated Canadian chef, TV host, and cookbook author, Dennis Prescott, on the program. A former musician turned culinary sensation, Dennis has built a thriving online community sharing his passion for cooking. From his work on Netflix's Restaurants on the Edge to his collaborations with renowned brands, Dennis brings a wealth of expertise to the kitchen. His latest cookbook, Cook with Confidence, is set to hit shelves soon. Join us as we explore the world of food and discover the inspiration behind Dennis's culinary journey. I'll take you now to my conversation with Chef Dennis Prescott. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones, and today I'm very honored to have with us Chef Dennis Prescott on the program. His new cookbook, Cook with Confidence, over 100 inspiring recipes to cook and eat together, will be out September 24th. Dennis, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Now, for our listeners who may not be familiar with you, can you tell us where you're from and where you live now?
For sure. I am from a town, I'm from a province called New Brunswick in the east coast of Canada. I grew up in a town called Riverview. Now I live in Dieppe. They're basically sister cities. But, you know, this was home most of my life. And I've moved away. I've kind of lived all over, certainly traveled all over. But just before COVID, I found myself back home here and really fell back in love with being in my own backyard, having access to the ocean and all the incredible seafood that we have. Things that I guess when I was a little younger, I took for granted. But it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world.
Now, we all know you as a chef and related to food, but you started as a musician. How did that experience shape your approach to cooking and creating recipes? And what did you play?
So I was a guitar player, easiest answer. Loved it. I had one goal. I was going to be a guitar player. I went to university. A guy who had a van said, "Hey, I'm going on the road. I'm going to tour in Tennessee and Virginia and Kentucky, places that I hadn't been." And I thought, this sounds a lot better than the business degree that I'm currently studying. So I went on the road. And that turned into me effectively becoming a musician for about 10 years. And traveling all over, making records, playing with a number of different bands. And at the back end of those 10 years, I landed in Nashville, Tennessee. And
Oh, wow.
as a musician, we had an opportunity at a studio to become studio musicians and maybe make some records, work alongside with some of the engineers. The thing with being a musician is it's very rich in experience. That's about it. So it's an incredible opportunity, but it's a very challenging world. And I was on an entertainer's visa. Was grateful to be on that, but basically couldn't get a supplemental job where I could go and work at a coffee shop or something like that. And I needed something to control. So at the suggestion of a friend, who kind of sat me down and had a little bit of a come to Jesus moment with me and said, like, you need to start taking care of yourself. You're not eating great. And you need to adjust. I had spent 10 years eating at 3:00 in the morning as a musician. Once the show got done, just not taking care. And I said, I don't know what that means. How do I take care of myself? And he said, well, you need to learn how to cook. I had this benefit of traveling all over and experiencing great food, but I had no idea how to cook. And I said, well, how do I do this? At that point, YouTube was very new. Instagram didn't exist. Of course, I'm not going to school. So he said, why don't you go to the library and borrow some cookbooks? And I very vividly remember looking at him and saying, you're crazy. The library does not have cookbooks. Of course they do. They have sections. I'm grateful mine are in there. So I went and I borrowed 3 cookbooks and I brought them home. There were three Jamie Oliver books. I remember actually he asked me, why did you pick these? And I said, the guy on the cover seems happy. He seems like a good looking, happy guy. And the recipes seem approachable. And I made a dish, a chicken korma dish that I remember eating in Brighton, England, on the pier, near the pier, when I made a record a few years there before, and I tried this dish. So I invited about 20 musicians, studio mates, engineers over. We put a ton of tables together in the middle of this living room with chairs that had camping chairs that had the beer pockets on the side, very, very luxe. And I made this dish. And it was probably terrible, to be very honest. But it's like it was yesterday. I can remember it getting quiet just for a second when everyone took their first bite, and then it got a little bit louder and people started to engage. That's when I fell in love with food, because I didn't realize that you could create beautiful moments at the table in the same way that I had done for so many years, playing somebody's favorite song or a song that reminded them of high school. I didn't realize that there was other creative outlets that I could tap into that would connect and touch other people. And it was just off to the races from there.
Now, you were early adopter for YouTube, not YouTube, sorry. I'll edit that out. Instagram, and you were really using it as a food influencer. How did you turn this passion into a full-time career, transitioning from Instagram to TV and cookbooks?
I mean, I one step after another for sure. I think often it seemed the overnight rise is something that we feel we see in folks, and we forget about the journey through the valley to get to the mountaintop. I started sharing on Instagram. Actually, the exact same person who said you should go to the library is the person who said, there's this app called Instagram. I think you'd like it. And suggested that I download it. So I'm very grateful to this person. His name's Mark, and I'm very grateful to him. But I downloaded the app, and the thing is, there was no predetermined thought or idea or any intentionality around it becoming a food account. It was just the only photos that I was taking on my phone, and I naturally started uploading them. I did a ton of caterings. I'd worked in restaurants. I would do, work at the studio over the years. I ran a coffee and donut shop. I kind of did it all. I catered in the Hamptons, and everywhere I would go, I would take a photo and I would upload it. And then eventually, very slowly that community started to grow. And I didn't realize, oh wait, there's people just like me who love food, who love connecting with people, who love this kind of shared collision of food and community at the table that we all connect to, but they might live in Bali or Tokyo or Nairobi or London or down the street from me, but we don't know each other, but we can connect online through food. And that's to me, one of the most positive things about social media, is being able to share those beautiful moments centered around food that we love or around the arts. So I started just naturally posting. Eventually, I was working at a job, just trying to and then also doing food, trying to figure life out. And I had a DM from some folks at Food and Wine Magazine. They said, hey, would you consider writing an article for us? And you'd also have to take the photos. So I went out and I bought a camera, and I tried to figure out how to take proper photos on a proper camera. And I wrote a column for them for a while. That led to more growth, led to a cookbook deal, led to some morning shows, led to more opportunities, and then eventually led to the TV show that I host on Netflix, and then other things along the way. But it definitely was, what seems like, at least maybe on the outside, a quicker rise was really maybe a 10 to 12-year journey.
Now, many people first saw you on Restaurants on the Edge and The Food That Built America. Can you talk about how your expertise contributed to your work on those shows?
Definitely. I mean, Restaurants on the Edge to me it's one of the greatest opportunities I've ever had, maybe will ever have. We filmed literally all over the world. I learned so much about flavor and texture and new cuisines. More specifically, I got to work alongside some of the most beautiful, inspiring people on planet Earth. And I think, one of the benefits of me being a musician for so many years is I've never had any fear factor around being on camera or being in front of people, because I spent 10 years being on stage in front of people.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I was able to jump, I think, a lot of hurdles initially. I didn't put two and two together until much later. But we showed up on day one to film day one of the first episode in Muskoka, Ontario. It was freezing cold, and in the middle of winter. And everyone was like, "You're super comfortable." Yeah, because I don't mean to be. I'm just comfortable. I think the way that I was able to contribute to that show and other shows is I'm a big believer that as a host, I'm there as a vehicle on behalf of the viewer at home, the contributor who I'm speaking to, whether that's a farmer, a fisherman, a chef. They're the hero. They're the hero in that moment. They're the expert. They're who we want to learn from. if I go tuna fishing with someone, I would never pretend to be a professional tuna fisherman because I'm not. So why would I try to? So for me, I want to get out of the way of that, ask really important, great questions, kind of navigate a good conversation, but really just get out of the way of the hero telling their own story. And I think, because of that, we have gotten to, both through that show and other shows that I've worked on, connect and learn from some very inspiring folks who don't often get a microphone. If you're a farmer working the field, you're typically not a person who's on a podcast or on a television show, but you are an expert in your space. You have so much to offer and you have so much we can learn from. So for me, it's just an honor to give that space to those folks who really deserve that platform.
Now, many people may not know that you're also World Vision and SDG2 WFP Chef's Manifesto Ambassador. Can we talk about those things a little bit and how you're dedicated to addressing global food security challenges by promoting sustainable practices, including food access, combating hunger in developing communities, and more?
Definitely. I mean, on a base level, we have enough food to feed everyone in the world. It's 2024. People say things like this all the time. It's 2024. Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? I would say we would probably all agree that in the year of 2024, everyone should go to bed with a full belly. And just on a base level, I think as someone who works in the food industry specifically, whether you speak to four people or 4 million people, your voice is important. It's necessary, and we should use it well. I just happen to be in a position where I'm speaking to a larger group of folks on a consistent basis. I want to make sure that I'm using that voice well, again, to amplify the voices of folks who deserve to have their stories told, like I just said, but also just to inspire people that, you might not be able to change the world, but you can change someone's world. The easiest way to do that is just to lean into food access. I think often we don't know how to go about that. And I would say that that's the case for chefs too, and folks who work in the food industry. Everyone wants to help, but how do you help? So we created, myself and a number of people under the direction of a person named Paul Noonan, created the Chef's Manifesto in London several years ago. And the whole kind of goal was to create a framework for chefs, food professionals, and people who love food to affect their personal life, their personal business, to make it more sustainable, to make it more educational, and take all that grandfathered knowledge that you have. A chef doesn't waste food, as an example, because food waste is food cost. So you're not wasting anything. But if you're a home cook, you might not know what to do with that extra, 2 carrots in your fridge. You might not know what to do. So for us, it's about sharing that knowledge so everyone is empowered on a base level, whether you live in Chicago or somewhere else, that you treat food in a very different way. And also just raise the conversation about places in the world like East Africa that have been suffering from a drought for years and years, and how those folks obviously deserve to have the same kind of joy moments at the table that everyone does. And then hopefully, how can we drive that conversation so that we can bring more people to the table and educate folks on how do you actually help? I think it's a scary world. It's a long way of getting at. It's a scary world and hard to navigate how you actually help. And I think that so because of that, a lot of folks just kind of wash their hands of it, not because they want to, they just don't know how to take the first step. And for me, it's important to educate folks on, I know it's a lot, I know there's a lot of causes, there's a lot of organizations, but you can take one step. And if nothing else, if it's not something globally, I guarantee there's probably some folks in the city that you live that might not have enough food today. There's a local food bank. If you can do some extra, that's great. If not, then just put to use the food that you do have in your fridge so that you're wasting less. It cuts down on your cost as well. Food is expensive. It is getting increasingly more expensive. So to me, it's just about the full education on how do we just make the food world a better, more equitable, more cost efficient, and more food access driven society.
Your cookbook titles, your previous one was Cook with Confidence, and your upcoming one is Eat Delicious. These titles are very inviting. What do you hope readers will be able to gain from these books, just beyond the recipes?
I mean, Eat Delicious was all about creating the best food possible. It was about food and fun. And, I think I don't know if you ever think somebody's going to give you the opportunity to write a book to begin with, because it's such an honor. to have a publisher say, would you like to write this? I had no idea what I was doing because I'd never written a book before, obviously. So that I learned so much. I had an incredible team. I learned so much. But the overarching kind of the North Star for that book was, I want to empower people, whether you've been in the kitchen your whole life or you've never cooked an egg before. Here are some ways that you can make your food more delicious. And make your life more delicious. If we have the opportunity to eat 3 meals a day, shouldn't they be as delicious as possible? Flash forward, and I was grateful that book did very well and that so many folks are still cooking from it. And flash forward with Cook with Confidence. To me, Cook with Confidence is that it's both the next step in, I think, my cookbook world and also my personal journey. I had, between Cook with Confidence and Eat Delicious, Eat Delicious came out in 2017. Cook with Confidence, of course, 2024. That's a big span. A lot of that was me spending basically the better part of those years on an airplane, traveling, meeting people, learning, cooking alongside some of the best chefs in the world, and also some of the most incredible home cooks in the world, learning technique and flavor, thought process around food. So this book is my I'll say, encyclopedia of deliciousness. It definitely is approachable in the sense that if you don't cook consistently, you're going to find recipes that you love in there. But it's also, the idea of Cook with Confidence was really to set you up for success in the kitchen. I think food should be the best part of everyone's day. It should just be fun, exciting, engaging. It shouldn't be stressful. We're nervous often because we have folks coming over on Friday. And on Wednesday, we're nervous, like, what are we going to make? Are they going to like it? Is it going to be okay? And I think at the end of the day, I want to show people Oz a little bit, take the veil off of some of those things that might be a little scary in the kitchen and really set up folks for success. So of course, there's a lot of dishes that I love that are definitely approachable, but there's other tips and tricks in Cook with Confidence. If you want to go the next step, if you've never opened an oyster before, if you've never cooked with oysters, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do that. If you've never pinbone a fish before, I'm going to walk you through how to do that. If you don't want to do that, of course, you can get your fishmonger to do it. But if you want to take that next step and you want to be a little more adventurous, I wanted to give you those opportunities as well. So, it took a long time to put the book together. I'm very proud of where we're at. And I know people are going to love it. And it's definitely, like I say, it's my version, or at least my encyclopedia of deliciousness. And I can't wait for folks to read it.
As a librarian, I'm very excited about your upcoming book, Cook with Confidence, because basically I encounter people almost on a daily basis that are young people or even older people who want to kind of start learning how to cook and get better at it. They're inspired by television and media. Do you think this was a really timely book? It came out at just the right time?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I hope so anyway, for sure. Also, side note, I owe literally everything to the library and librarians. So it's such an honor to know. I love what you do, and I love the access, the education. I wouldn't be cooking if it wasn't for the library. That's the absolute truth. For me with this book, one of the I'm a silver linings kind of person. I will always see the world through glass, rose-colored glasses, maybe to a fault, but I will. One of the best things that came out of lockdown and the next couple of years was folks started to think about their food. They thought about, what am I cooking? Can I cook a little more? I need to be a little more cost efficient in the kitchen. With inflation and everything that's going on, the food world has changed in the last 4 years. I think that there's a growing appetite among home cooks for more. I think that we typically had gone to a restaurant and had our favorite meal and would never think to recreate that at home. But I do think that there's the pendulum has swung a little bit further the other way. And now folks are thinking, well, I love that dish. Maybe I can make that. And they're willing to take those extra steps. They're willing to risk, in the kitchen in a way that we haven't historically done that. What I wanted to do with this book is create recipes that are fun, approachable, accessible. You don't have to go to a specialty shop necessarily to get those ingredients. But they're also dishes that you're going to be proud of, that they're beautiful, that they taste delicious, and they are going to make you a better cook. So for me, it's about finding that line. We're not doing swoops and foams and tweezer food and Michelin star, of course, because that's not where we're at. But we are taking our dishes just to that next level. And I think once you do that, you continue to fall in love with food. You continue to fall in love with creating beautiful moments at the table, and it just makes you develop an appetite for more.
People like my son, Josh, who's 30, he's been inspired by the TV show The Bear and also Anthony Bourdain's No Reservations. And can you talk about some of these techniques in your book that people should start learning when they're new and they want to start really developing good techniques for the kitchen?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first of all, of course, our listeners at home can't see, but I have a painting of Bourdain behind me,
Yes,
and who I absolutely adore. And The Bear obviously is if you're one of the folks who are listening who have not watched it, please do watch that show. It's very inspiring. The Bear is a great example of high level cooking. It's stressful. It's exciting. Most of us don't want to work in that world, of course, because it requires a certain level of person to want to do that. But we do want to have access to that food. And I have infinite respect for the folks who work on the line and who do that on a daily basis, literally all over the planet. They are rock stars. They deserve so much credit. I think, from a technique side of things, for me and how I view a recipe, again, is taking the veil off of all of the kind of secrecy behind these dishes, showing people, teaching people exactly what they need to do and walking them through the steps of how to do this. So a big part of that, as an example, if you want to, there's a salmon dish in the book. It's salmon, there's pineapple, it's cured in miso. It's very delicious. Could you get a whole salmon and break that down and then pin bone that? And of course. Can you also get your local fish market to do that? Of course. So if, for me, I wanted to walk folks through the steps on, you can do all of this, and I'm going to teach you how to do this step by step. It's significantly easier than you might think. But if you're not there yet and you don't want to do those steps, no worries. Here's your pass. Go and you can do this. So for us, grilling is another example. I'm a massive griller. I love everything around barbecue and grill. I fell in love with food in Nashville, so it comes by me very honestly. So I'll say half, that's a broad stroke, but half of the recipes in the book have a grilling option to them. If you want to do this on the grill, here's how you do this. If you live in New York City, you probably don't have access to a grill, or Toronto or Chicago. So of course, there's also stovetop or oven-based versions of that recipe so that you can do it no matter what situation you're in. Again, just wanting to set up folks for success wherever they're at. So if you want to do this summertime, great, you do it outside, no worries. If not, you can do it in February in the middle of your kitchen because you still love that dish. So for me, from a technique side of things, it was just about offering as many alternatives to each kind of scenario as possible. Of course, we can only do so much, so that no matter where you're at in life, you can pull off these recipes and they're going to be delicious.
You're very well traveled, and you spent, a considerable amount of time in a big food town, Nashville, and also, Canada has many wonderful food cities. Where do you draw inspiration from your travels, particularly dishes that embody a particular culture or cuisine?
Yeah, I mean, it's I'll quote the late great Anthony Bourdain behind me in saying the first thing that you should do when you go to a city is go to the farmer's market. I fundamentally believe that. I think that that's the best way to fall in love with local food, meet incredible people. I would suggest, if you are a person who's listening and you don't go to the farmer's market, please just go. And once you go, talk to everyone. Talk to the farmers, talk to the folks who make the cheese there, ask them about their process. They're so proud of it. They put their heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears into what they're making. They will tell you everything. The other thing is they're often going to tell you how they cook it and maybe give you some tips on how you can cook it at home too. I've always said, at the end of the day, a chef's job is really just to not mess up what a farmer already did. They've done the lion's share of the work. So we just need to take that beautiful thing that they grew and, expand on it. But they're the expert for sure. So for me, travel, farmers market, absolutely. Restaurants goes without saying. I will try to find restaurants. To me, I feel like the corner mom and pop style restaurant is, for me, significantly more inspiring than any other restaurant. I love, the odd fine dining meal, and I'm very inspired by it. And of course, there's creative genius that comes from that. But finding a restaurant, in a tucked in little corner in Rome with a couple that has been running it for 50 years, and they're making these pasta dishes that they grew up on, and you're hearing the stories and just experiencing the vibe of being in that room that's existed for such a long time. That to me is significantly more inspiring, and I will take something away from that. So I think, if you're a person who has the opportunity to travel, try to eat new flavors, try to meet as many people as possible. And if you can't, and if you're not, not everyone has the opportunity or the means to get on a plane and go somewhere, there are probably restaurants, farmers markets, local markets in your town that are serving dishes that you've never eaten before. And you don't need to get on a plane to go there. So, maybe you can't go to Thailand, but maybe there's a Thai restaurant where you can try some new dishes and expand on your palate. And then just give a think about, okay, I love this. How do I incorporate this into dishes that I'm making in my own house? So I think it's really just about a flavor journey wherever you're at. For me, I just have this incredible opportunity to travel so much. And that's, Cook with Confidence, a perfect example of that. There's so many dishes that I cooked alongside folks, whether it was in Ethiopia or Kenya or Malta or Finland, that made their way into the book because I was so inspired by the flavors. And of course, I wanted to tell the story of the person who I cooked with as well.
Your books and your social media presence and your TV work really seem to me to foster a strong sense of community. You seem to really love people and being out in the world. How do you connect with your audience and build such a loyal following?
I think, I've said for a long time, food is community. I think that food is food, but the reality is food is much more than that. It's those beautiful moments that we spend at the table. If I make someone a dish, I mean, I hope that it's memorable, but the reality is, a year down the road, you're probably not going to remember what you ate, but you might remember having the best night with great people. And I think that great food can foster those moments at the table. And that's why I say food is community. I think that the online community is the same. We all love food. We're passionate about these moments at the table. We're passionate about, whether it's a holiday, Easter, someone's birthday, the holidays are in December. We all have beautiful moments in our lives where we get to spend time with a large number of people at the table. And typically we'll say that's our favorite time. That's our favorite time of the year. The online community to me is just a natural kind of byproduct of that, if that makes sense. In my world, I believe that I'm the moderator. Of course, I'm creating the work that goes online, but at the end of the day, I might be the moderator of a forum, but I'm just one voice. And to me, my community is everything. I think, for me, I get inspiration from them. Often I'll post a photo on an Instagram story as an example and say, hey, what do you guys want me to make next? And I will make what they want, what folks want. To me, I feel like it's a conversation. It's not a one-sided conversation. I think often online it becomes a very one-sided conversation, but I want it to be a two-way street. And I want to listen to folks. I want to get better from it. I do, and I get very inspired by it. And the one nice thing is that the food community is, for the most part, the most positive, encouraging, uplifting community online, and I might even say on planet Earth. Because at the end of the day, if you love food, it's because you love sharing food with other people. Without going into too much of a tangent, I've often said I don't know a single person that has fallen in love with cooking, but I know countless people that fall in love with feeding people, and then as a byproduct fall in love with cooking. And I think if you're a person who loves to cook and you love to feed people, you have that servant's heart. And I think because of that, you're naturally going to go, walk through life with kindness, joy, wanting to serve other people great food. And because of that, I mean, that just goes, it translates to the online community as well, which is just to say, I'm so grateful because it's such a positive, uplifting community that I've been able to build online. And it's very, very inspiring to me and keeps me going, honestly.
Now, you started off as somebody reading some Jamie Oliver books, and you started off, and then you came to where you are now. Can you give some advice or maybe some insight to somebody who's starting to cook and is very nervous about it?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is cook something that you already love. I think that, I see a lot of folks that will start cooking and they say, okay, well, I've got to learn the 5 mother sauces, and they'll make a
Yeah.
hollandaise and it splits and they're disappointed.
Yeah.
A lot of those techniques are very challenging. Prep cooks, line cooks work in hotels for, months to perfect that. It's not to say that it's not going to be okay and that it's not going to be delicious, but I think, you're not setting yourself up for success, and you might be a little stressed. What I would suggest is when you go to a restaurant and you look at a menu and there's a menu item, what's that dish that you can't not order? You have to order it because you love it so much. Learn how to make that, because you already know you love it. You already know how it's supposed to taste, how it's supposed to come together. You know that the process is going to be fun. And then it's just going to expand on there. The moment that you serve that dish that you're proud of to a table and everyone finds it delicious is the moment you fall in love with cooking, because you want that moment again and again and again. And I think, so for me, whatever you, and that could be anything. It's fun for me in the kitchen is different than fun for you in the kitchen, but you have to find your own fun. Just make sure it's fun and not stressful, because food at the end of the day should only be joyful. We live lives that have so much challenge and stress and struggle, and it's all very relative, but reality is we're dealing with things on a day-to-day basis. The one thing that we typically can control are those moments at the table, and those moments centered around deliciousness. And I think, I watch folks go into that, bringing stress into the kitchen. And to me, it should be the most stress-free part of your day. The easiest way to do that is to cook dishes that bring you joy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to ask, looking at your book, Cook with Confidence, is there anything in there? I mean, I know this is a hard question to answer, but is there anything in there particularly you're really excited for people to try?
So, I mean, it's a very hard question because it's like picking your favorite kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. So it might be a longer answer to your question, but being back in New Brunswick during COVID, I started to look at my own backyard, and I thought, I have not appreciated the beauty of this. I've not appreciated the beauty of the water, the natural resources that we had, and also that no one is really properly telling stories from here. And I had told stories literally all over the world, never at home. Yeah. And I started to partner with the province, and I started to partner with some local folks here. And I basically spent a year on snow crab boats, lobster boats, on oyster farms, working alongside these incredible fishermen, people who work on the boats, the massive industry, learning exactly what it is that they do and hoping to tell their story. And I think because of that, of course, Cook with Confidence is not a seafood book, but there is a lot of seafood in there. And I think the reason is because I'm from the part of the world that I would argue has the best cold water shellfish on the planet. Our water's perfect. There's a very high salinity. There's no cruise ships, so it's very clean, and it's incredibly cold. So hard, those beautiful hard water shellfish like lobster and oysters thrive here. And so to me, I wanted to include that story because it's my story. And I think at the end of the day, I would say this to someone who's looking to start out, to jump back on your last question, is tell your story. Your story is valuable. Your story is important. Your story is necessary. Your story is unique to only you. And I think once you lean into telling your story, that's when folks gravitate towards you, because they want to hear your natural, authentic, organic story. So for me, what I'm excited about is hopefully folks learning a little bit more, not just about my story, but about where I'm from and this beautiful part of the world. And that could be cooking, a grilled lobster dish that they've never had lobster grilled before. It could be, trying their first oyster. It could be, some of the beef dishes, because we have incredible beef and produce where I live here. But to me, it's all about story. And the other thing is, hopefully learning the journey. There's an example very quickly that I cooked with a woman, named Beatrice, that I've become very close with. She lives in the south of Kenya. I've been back to visit her several times. I wanted to tell the story of a dish that we made together. It's a version of a chicken curry that's unique to Zakunzi in her part of Kenya, with some chapati, bread that's rolled out like a snail and cooked over fire. So the recipe's in there. It's absolutely delicious. It's one of my favorite dishes in there. But the joy is being able to tell her story and how I learned from her, because it's not my recipe. It's my take on her recipe, of course, but it's her recipe. So there's a lot of dishes in the book that, to me, they're more than just a recipe. It's a story, it's a human, it's a person behind the dish. And hopefully when you make that dish at home, you're bringing a little bit of that person who I drew that inspiration from into your kitchen.
This is a really beautiful book. I got a chance to see some advances of it in PDF, and it's just really lovely. Now, how did you feel when you first saw it? Like when you got to get the proof of it, how did you feel? Like, was it like a real magical moment for you?
So I've had that moment twice.
Yeah.
And both times I can tell you it doesn't, it's a wild thing. Everything, most things that we work on in life are, if not immediate, pretty immediate. You work on a project, you see the results. With a book, as probably many of your listeners would know, there's such a long time between you handing in manuscript and then the book actually being in your hands. So you start to forget that it's even a real thing. And you also have to unmarry yourself from the creative, I think, for a moment, because you've immersed yourself in this for such a long time. I effectively worked on this book for about 5 years. So after 5, and then didn't think about it for a year. I mean, I thought about it, but not really. It wasn't my day to day. And then all of a sudden, one day, it shows up in the mail. And it's the most surreal, wild, emotional experience to hold something in your hand that you have literally put your story into so many countless hours. Of course, that's not to even mention the countless folks who don't get credit, who work on the book, the folks behind the scene, the editors, the publisher, copywriters. So many folks, it takes a village to pull something off like this. But the moment that you hold it in your hand, to me, there's nothing more surreal. It's very different. I mean, I've also had the honor of watching kind of the first episode of a series of myself on TV. Mm-hmm. That's an amazing experience. It's unbelievable. But it still doesn't compare to holding that copy in your hands and leafing through it. And it's hard to put to words that feeling, because again, I've only felt that 2 times in my life. I'm grateful that I've gotten to experience that 2 times, but it's the only thing I've ever only experienced 2 times. And I'm, maybe I will again, maybe I won't. We'll see. But it's, I know that that it's special. You're holding something of value, because it's not just a book to you. It's your journey. It's your story. It's your blood, sweat, and tears for such a long time. And it's truly an honor.
So you've kind of come full circle. You started off as the person checking out the Jamie Oliver books from the library, and now people like me are recommending your books to people. How does that feel for you to kind of make that full circuit?
I mean, I just said it, but I'll repeat. It's an honor. For me, at the end of the day, I decided many years ago that my ultimate goal is to help to drive folks from the couch to the kitchen, because I believe the byproduct of the kitchen is the table, and the table is where we need to spend more time. Societally, we're better people when we spend more time at the table, centered around good food, good conversation. And I think you don't have to look at the world too long to realize we need to talk more. We need to spend more time together. Absolutely. And we need to break bread a little bit more. And so for me, this book, if nothing else, hopefully I can inspire some folks to spend more time centered around great food at the table and great conversations. I think food makes the world a better place. Working alongside folks who recommend that, to me, is the greatest honor possible. And then, having photos sent to me on email or Instagram from people who, maybe it's a family, the selfie, maybe it's a photo of just the food that they've cooked a dish from that book. It's an incredible feeling, because what it is they're not just cooking my recipe. They're, like I said before, they're bringing in that story, that journey of the folks who I learned that dish from, or told that story about, or the farmer who made the carrots and I wanted to tell a story of their carrots. They're bringing that into their kitchen. And then the reality is recipes become part of our family story, right? I remember being a kid, and my mom had a recipe called Martha's lasagna, I don't know who Martha is, but it was called Martha's Lasagna because my mom knew someone named Martha and she handed this recipe down. I ate this lasagna my entire life, right? How cool is that? So the thing is with cookbook is what happens often, you find this recipe, it becomes part of your family story. So every Tuesday night you have this dish, and then that's not my recipe anymore. It's your recipe, and that's what I love. To me, it's so much more than just food. It's part of your family journey, and if a cookbook can inspire you to change, what you're cooking at the table, to draw some inspiration from, is a great honor. And of course, having folks like yourself at the library recommending that, the greatest honor possible, because like you said, that's what happened to me. If it wasn't for me going in the Nashville Public Library and borrowing those 3 cookbooks, I certainly would not be where I am today, would not be cooking probably, and would not have this beautiful life. So to me, I want to hopefully encourage other people that you can have your own version of that, and go to the library more. Everyone should go to the library.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Now that Cook with Confidence is going to be out next month, what's next for you?
Yeah, so there's always a number of things on the go. We're working on a TV project right now that I can't fully talk about, but we're working on another TV project. Right. Doing some other projects as well. I'm honored to represent a bunch of brands, and we travel all over. Of course, the Sustainable SDG2 Advocacy Hub, work with the Chefs Manifesto in the United Nations. WFP is going to continue. But for right now, honestly, I am just leaning into this beautiful moment around this cookbook, and this cookbook coming out, telling these stories, cooking alongside some folks. I was in New York last week and cooked some of the dishes with some folks who were inspiring there for social media. To me, it's all about this cookbook right now, and just kind of leaning into this next chapter.
One last question. This isn't one of the ones I talked about, but I just wanted to ask out of curiosity. Have you met Jamie Oliver?
I have, actually. Yes.
What was that like?
He's lovely.
Because you were kind of inspired by him, right? So that must have been amazing.
It was very cool to, what do they say? They say don't meet your heroes. Yeah. And I've had 3 moments in my life, very, very vivid moments in my life, where I have met folks who I would say were my heroes, Jamie Oliver being one of them, who were the opposite of don't meet your heroes. He was so kind, gracious. I got to tell him, this is my story. Spend a few moments with him. Of course, we don't know each other. We met at an event. But him taking the time to hear that story was beautiful. And for me, it was such a wonderful thing to be able to share that with him. Because again, just like if I hadn't gone to the library to borrow those books, if I hadn't connected with him, his style of creating recipes, because I would say I've adopted a very similar North Star in creating dishes that are beautiful, accessible, attainable, and delicious for folks at home. And he's been the champion of that for 25 years. So I think we all draw a little bit of inspiration from him. So yeah, absolutely, getting to meet him was unbelievable.
Cook with Confidence, over 100 inspiring recipes to cook and eat together, will be out on September 24th. We're going to have links to this in the bio, so if you're listening, you can pre-purchase this, or if you're listening after, you can purchase it after, and it's all better bookstores. Dennis, I really want to thank you for being on the podcast. I've loved getting a chance to meet you and talk with you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much for having me. Like I said, librarians are my favorite people on the planet, so thank you for having me today.
That's all we have time for now on the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. A big thank you to Dennis Prescott for sharing his culinary insights and passion. Be sure to check out his latest cookbook, Cook with Confidence. We'll have a link to the book in the show notes. You'll be able to purchase the book on September 24th. Until then, it's available on pre-order, and you can also purchase the book when it comes out at all better bookstores. Until next time, this is Dean Jones, and I'll see you in the library.